I'd like to call this meeting to order today. And I want to notify all the members that we will be recording this session. So I believe on the agenda, my published agenda, after calling immediate order, the first order of business is comments by Director Hayes. Good morning, Mr. Director. You have any
Sorry,
comments
Jason,
for
if we could
us?
just get a roll call though, before
A
that.
roll call?
Yeah.
Yes.
Morning. Roll call. Jason Archer,
Present.
John Bowman,
Present.
Vanessa Parker Lewis,
Present.
everyone is present. We have
Thank
three.
you. Now I think we can go into the comments for Director Hayes. Director Hayes.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chairman, no comments or questions at this time. Just thanks everyone for your service.
Thank you, Director Hayes. And the published minutes also have the board chair remarks. I have no additional remarks to add this morning. It's appreciated us all getting on a Friday and having this update. So if the agenda is the correct order, I have the next order of business that I will entertain a motion to go into closed session. I want to read it. If someone would make the motion for this board to go into to go to closed session pursuant to section 610.021, paragraph 1 RSMO, section 114.020.1, subparagraph 1, SLCRO, section 610.021, paragraph 12, RSMO, and section 114.020.1, subparagraph 12, SLCRO. Can someone make that motion and second it?
And then Jason, just for, sorry, Mr. Chairman, if we could have Mavis then do a roll call vote after the motion and second to go into closed session.
So moved.
We've got the motion from Vanessa. We got a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mavis, would you please call roll on this motion?
Yes. Jason Archer,
Yes.
John Bowman,
Aye.
and Vanessa Parker Lewis.
Yes.
We have three. We can move into closed session.
Okay, Dave, are you able to move us into closed session?
Yep, I'll start it
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, we're back.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're back at regular session. The next order of business, I don't really understand. So the director, the read ahead memo, which describes what we're doing next on the financial reports, is that?
Yeah.
you do-
So I'll just give an overview of a couple things, and then most of this meeting is the financial report, and the read ahead memo was just to give you all some insight about two of the things that we'll be reviewing, the funding for the DSS programs. But yes, I'm the next item if you want to if I can proceed. Okay.
Please do.
All right. So I'll just say some quick comments and notes. We're actually, despite the challenges that we've been experiencing, we're at a pretty exciting time. We're starting a new program year. We're working to notify the selected subrecipients and entering into official contracts by no later than the end of September to begin operationalizing the WIOA programs that are for PY23. So, we're in this transition. We've been in a transitional period working with EDSI as well as Employment Connection and navigating the last few months, but we'll be getting into a more permanent, stable period with the providers that we have. It's a good time to set some new goals and objectives for the board, for the subcontractors. One thing I just want to put on everyone's radar is that there is next year a submission for our local plan. And that is something that thankfully we're not worried about at the moment, right, Dr. Manning? Because we don't need any more to focus on at the moment. But it is something that I think everyone should start thinking about. And if you're familiar with the local plan, you'll recall that it's essentially our strategy for the Workforce Development Board. So within that, a lot of our policies are included. Our sector-based strategy is outlined, our vision, our goals as a board, and ultimately our staff in working with our subcontractors are implementing that vision. And so now is a good time to start thinking about how we develop the vision and the strategy. A lot of the technical sides of what we have to provide in that local plan, the staff will take care of, but I do think there's an opportunity for us to either form a committee or a board committee around this, or to bring to the board a discussion topic around our vision as we move to the next 4 years, because it's essentially that inflection point here where we're looking at, turning this in 2024. But we have some time and we're getting ahead of it proactively to start really thinking about what does this St. Louis County Workforce Development Board want to be? What does it need to be? I'll note too that in the last 3 years that I've been here, we've seen a number of transitions of board members who have been with us for quite a while. We have a number of new, probably 50% at least of our board is new as of 2020, essentially. And so it's really a good time to get some new input too on what that direction looks like. And I know our county executive, as Director Hayes could attest, is very interested in workforce development as a priority for the county as well. And so, to the extent that we create the vision that really guides our program implementation, this is a great opportunity for us, and we'll have an opportunity to really champion workforce development in the county as we move forward too. So getting that vision and those objectives, clarity around that is really important to that mission of amplifying the great work that St. Louis County Workforce Development can do for the community and for the residents that seek our services. In the last year, we've served, despite the challenges that we've had, we have served a significant number of adults and youth in our community. But we want to think about intentionality as we move forward in terms of the training programs that we're offering, in terms of the types of services that we're providing. We're also now I wouldn't say the pandemic is gone. I've been reading news stories about the new variant that's circulating, but we're going to be in a new period of time. We've had the pandemic in the last 3 years too. Has that reset our thinking about where we are from a workforce development standpoint, or where the need is from a workforce development standpoint? We know that still there's issues like transportation access and childcare access that are affecting worker participation in the economy. We know that Inflation has also, created more challenges for families to be able to provide for themselves, and jobs that are, and many jobs that are in high demand are not always also the best paying jobs. So how are we offering family sustaining wages? How are we offering quality job opportunities where people can actually build wealth and not just survive and live day to day and paycheck to paycheck? And these are just, broader questions I think we should start to think about as we craft our strategy moving forward. But when the board says this is our vision and our strategy, this is our sector strategies, that also then tells us who should we be partnering with, what community-based partners do we need, what technology solutions, Vanessa, do we need to implement that vision, what training offerings do we need to provide to as services to the community. Are the partners that we're currently working with, are they graduating people that are getting the highest paying jobs that we're aspiring to, or are we just partnering with them because we've been partnering with them? Now is the time to really start leaning into being intentional about how we align our services in a way that is towards a vision that the board sets. So I'm not necessarily inviting that discussion unless anybody wants to offer some initial thoughts today. I'm just flagging it for, I think I'm open to thoughts on how we get board engagement in that, because I do think the executive committee can offer some suggestions about how we do that. Is it a committee? Is it maybe we need to have a separate day for a retreat or something where we pull the board together to the extent that we can get everyone together on a single day or half a day? Open to thoughts on that, but I just wanted to present that as one item, and then we'll move into the financial reports. But I think it's a good period of time to start discussing this. Any initial reactions to that? Or how we might accomplish that? Jason, did you have? I thought I saw you raise your hand.
I don't think I have a comment at this time. I just, something for us as a, bringing it up here to an executive committee, we do need to engage the board in this and do what you said, talk about how to engage the members of our board and work on the strategic plan. So I think it's another conversation that we should have and come up with some ideas.
When I think about engagement, I think of multiple levels of engagement. I think of meaning and purpose and safety, psychological safety, from an employment perspective, but even in engagement with a board. I think that people tend to work with people that they enjoy working with, and they tend to do business with people they like and they get to know, so I do think that there's some value to coming together, to learn together and strategize. I don't think you have to always do that, right? I think virtual is what people are using today and technology today, but I do think there's some value with coming together. And I also think that there's some value to having multiple generational representation on the board. And I don't know if that's, I'm a Gen X, but I don't know if we have any millennials or generation, multiple generations on the board. And I think that would be helpful as well, to make sure that we consider that dynamic, because that's how you'll get new ideas as well.
Great, thank you. I took some notes on that. I think you're right that, thinking about our board composition is always important, because we do, have other members that may transition in this next year. And our terms, I think we approved our bylaws last year, so we'll have to be looking at, terms coming up in 2024 to look at membership too. And we can always grow the size of the existing board too. There are some vacancies, even though we were recertified as a board by the state. There are some vacancies that we still could fill based on the original composition of this board going back to 2020. So there are some opportunities to bring some new talent and new perspective in. And so, I know, Vanessa, I think you're responsible for us recruiting at least a couple members to the board, and I think was really helpful when you helped us identify, some good talent too. But it is something that this committee and the board overall should be mindful of is, when they're in the community, they might spot somebody who could add a lot of contributions. Our board chair has done a phenomenal job of listening and being a part of conversations that have led to then referrals to be considered, as board members. And I'll talk to you about 5 new members that are joining us. And I think at least 2 of them, maybe 3, were identified by Jason in his conversations with the Economic Development Partnership and some of the businesses that he works with in that role. So I think your point is well taken. John, do you have any comments for us? Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just curious. Any thoughts on like strategy on how we get to develop a strategy that really propels us forward? I know you've been involved in a lot of important initiatives in our region and even nationally. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you make an excellent point in regards to looking at the type of jobs that will provide a good standard of living instead of just encompassing occupations just to put people in employment. So looking at longer term career opportunities, I think is one of the things that we can probably identify from what the future market needs are going to be. We are transitioning into a different type of workforce, of course, with technology and all of that. So I think identifying where those needs are will give us room to try to provide those services within the training atmosphere.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it does get back to data, which is what we were just talking about, Vanessa, at the micro level of the data that's in the systems. But we also better leveraging labor market information to make adjustments and use real-time labor data to make the best decisions about where we invest our scarce resources. We may be one of the most or the most well-funded board in the state, but next to Kansas City. But at the same time, we need to be very intentional with where those resources are allocated because we want people to take advantage of our services and then leave with a sustainable employment opportunity that provides good wages, not just a job, not just any job, right? And they want to have quality training that actually allows them to move up in their career long term and not just to get to that next opportunity. So using data, looking at work environments today, to your point, John, and how work is done today and the types of skills that are needed to thrive in this economy is something that, again, we could probably pull some of those data points and gather that information and then empower the board. And if we form a committee or some voluntary group to help kind of shepherd some of this process, that could be a part of it. Make sure that our local plan and the sector strategy that we have is relevant for our local economy and the needs of the workforce.
Thinking about sector strategy, could it be sector strategy, or could it be employer based? So, give an example. I know, for McCormick Barron, we're based in the city, and a lot of our opportunities for our complexes are in underserved communities that are in St. Louis City. They're not necessarily in the county. However, we have several opportunities. We have several jobs open in St. Louis. So could we, and anyone can visit our website and see that, could we target different employers who really have a need for headcount in whatever area and help those employers be successful? And then whereby that's where you can kind of have a feather in your cap, is that we partnered with this particular employer and they had this particular hiring need, and we helped with training for that particular need and placement.
Mm.
And I'll just say I do see that there's been some effort in the last few years on the behalf of the board to really look at work-based learning opportunities that are aligned to the specific needs of an employer. Our incumbent worker training with Washington University, that's been a pretty successful program that's been built since 2020, and that's helping Washington University develop their own talent, entry-level talent that might be in other roles that are easier to fill, and moving those folks into a high demand area in medical assistance that, and then we help to subsidize the training for that. But it's very much employer centered on that, you know, the clinics at Washington University. But I think that, you know, there's room for more OJ on the job training opportunities or more incumbent worker training programs, apprenticeship opportunities. We only have a couple of apprenticeship partners right now that offer mostly healthcare centered apprenticeships. But, you know, the world of apprenticeship has expanded, and the opportunities for using apprenticeship in partnership with employers has grown. So how do we make sure that we're really thinking innovatively about that? I think there's a part that the county workforce board can play in leading in the work-based learning world. It seems like we're doing more of that than a lot of boards across the state right now. So I think we can build upon that foundation as we move forward too. And really think about how, you know, our business partners are our customers too. We talk a lot about the job seekers and the people we're putting into our programs, but WIOA requires us to be employer driven. It requires us to make sure that the people that we're supporting our job center refer to the jobs that are in demand, that are in high need in our local companies. So it's important to be responsive, not just to the industry, but to employer partners who come to our center and want to work with us.
Mhm.
And one thing I'll say too, as we look forward, is that we can't see workforce development in a vacuum. Director Hayes, I remember when you came on board, one of the first things you said was, how do we more effectively integrate workforce development within a broader service strategy to support our residents from a Department of Human Services perspective? That the Workforce Development Division is a partner and an entity that supports other areas. And I know we have Mark Peoples on a call as well, and our deputy director, and he mentioned recently at a meeting that we're seeing rising homelessness in our community, in the county as well as the city. And that's not a separate issue from workforce development. So how do we support and better integrate our workforce development services in a way that looks more holistically at the needs of the people that live in our community, and it helps them get to quality of life? Because it's not just a job to the end of helping to promote quality of life for people, but it's one resource that's critical to that. So how do we think more holistically about the needs? I think that's another component that the board, you know, will think about as we develop our strategy. So just wanted to make some time for that, just to kind of set that up. I think we'll have some discussion with our board at the August meeting about this. There's a number of votes that we'll need to have them take, but I do want to make sure that we have some space to start this conversation and then see what we can put together to help us in our development of the local plan, and especially the vision strategy of that local plan as we prepare for that for 2024. Other than that, I just have a few items I can move to in the financial report that I think are pretty easy to review. And if you have questions, certainly ask. First, we'll just go through what you already have access to if you've looked at your agenda, which is the notification that we're receiving Jobs League funding and Skill Up funding. We receive this notification every year, so this is not different. I will say what is different is that the notification for the Jobs League is substantially more money than we've had certainly last year. Looks like the Department of Social Services is funding the Jobs League at a substantial amount of $347,815, which is, compared to last year, I believe it was $70,000. So that's a significant investment, where we typically have our youth providers take on the Jobs League program. Historically it was the Summer Jobs League program, and it was really geared towards youth. And we've seen that it can be, in some cases, an additional tool, because the requirements for enrolling in that program are different from WIOA. In many ways, they're maybe not as restrictive as WIOA can be sometimes. So it can be a useful tool to have as well. So We haven't assigned that money to any subcontractor yet. We're just notifying the executive committee that we received these two funding amounts for the Skill Up program and the Jobs League program. And the Skill Up program, like the Jobs League, is that's really more for adults, but both programs are aimed at supporting individuals who are living in low-income households. And the Skill Up program supports those who are receiving TANF or on food assistance and other benefits. And so, that's just, again, another resource that we historically operate. We've always given the Skill Up contract typically to our adult and dislocated worker provider because it's an adult focused program. And then the Jobs League is focused on youth historically. So once we're able to solidify those contracts with the new providers, this would be an item that's added to the scope of work for those providers if we decide that we want to continue in that same vein, which makes most sense because we only have the year to spend this money. So I think having that funding go towards, and we'll have to determine how we split up the Jobs League because that's a significant amount of money between the different youth providers that we have. But that would be something that we're going to have to decide after we agree to accept the funding. But there's nothing really new about those allocations except for the amount for the Jobs League program, which is substantially higher. The Skill Up program looks generally the same or around the same as what it's been in the past. So, at least to me, Mavis, correct me if I'm wrong there in terms of the Skill Up program, but I believe that really hasn't changed dramatically in terms of the allocation.
No, it hasn't. It's basically the same.
Okay. So any questions on those programs? We'll be taking a board vote. We're sharing this with you because we'll be taking a board vote in August to receive those funds.
That's my question. I noticed on the notes, it requires a board. We don't take action in this committee, but the board will take action at the next meeting, correct?
Correct. Yes. It's just, this is a preview essentially of making sure you're notified that that'll be an item on the agenda. Okay. So if there's no more questions there, we'll move to the proposed budget allocations. And really, we should actually lengthen that a little bit to say that we're developing our planning budget for the WIOA program overall for adult dislocated worker and youth. We received our allocations from the state. We're working through getting an ordinance passed by the end of August that allows us to use those funds to write new contracts. And so every year we have to submit a budget, and we're in the early stages of developing this budget. We'll have it completed by the time that we get to the August meeting. But I'll just share kind of a working draft of that budget and talk through some of the priorities from a budgetary standpoint. You can see some of the right now the planned allocations for the subcontractors and offer any thoughts on that. So I'll go ahead and share my screen in just a moment to share that with you. Okay, can folks see the spreadsheet? The spreadsheet with numbers? Jake?
Greg.
Yes, we can see it. Go to the other screen. It's a little bit bigger. Do what you did just a second ago.
Move it to the other screen?
Make it a little bigger. I don't know what you just did, but it was a little
Oh.
bigger a second ago.
Okay, I can zoom
There
in.
you go.
Hold on. I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now you undid it.
Oh, okay. So this
There it is. Okay, now you undo it.
I don't know what I'm doing here except for I'm expanding it on my screen, but you're saying it's reducing it for some reason.
Yeah, it makes the text smaller, Greg. So if you have it the opposite way.
Okay. Let me try to zoom in on it. My apologies. I don't know. On my screen, it's not looking how it is for all of you. Does that help at all to see some of the numbers, or is it still small? Jason?
I can see
Hey,
it right
Greg,
there.
they
That
can
I can
go-
see.
They can go to the top of the screen and they'll see, I think it's -60, and it should be a plus sign next to it. If they click on it, they'll be able to increase the size of it themselves.
Okay.
Matter of
There
fact,
we
I'm increasing mine now.
Thank you. That works.
Got it. Thank you.
Mark
Director
Peoples, he told me about it.
I was gonna say we
And-
have some
and the
technology gurus. What'd you say, Vanessa?
And the mouse, and you can use the mouse to navigate and move the screen, move the, we can use the mouse to move the document if you increase it too much. I was on mute, so my apologies.
No worries. That's helpful too. Yep. So these are the current budgetary amounts. We did, if you recall, okay, when I say budgetary amounts, let me start from the top. So how we have this broken down is our adult and dislocated worker contracts are up at the top. Our one-stop operator contract is there at row 16. Then we have our youth program. So we'll start with that top area with the adult dislocated worker, one-stop, and youth. I want to remind the committee that we did receive more funding in our adult program this year, and our youth program also had an increase overall. We are required to allocate more of our funding to the out-of-school youth program. So historically, the county has had 2 contracts for the out-of-school youth program, at least in the last couple cycles. So we'll have 2 providers for the out-of-school youth program, and we also have the in-school youth program. The differences between those two are the age groups and whether or not those youth are connected to or they're enrolled in a school, or whether or not they're not enrolled in a school but they're out of school. So that's pretty intuitive. But we're seeing generally a little bit of a reduction from our typical adult and dislocated worker program from a staffing side and what we allocate to our contractors. But that's because we're allocating more funding to our one-stop operator. Historically, our one-stop operator was just an individual, a staff member. But this time we made the contract in our RFPs to also include additional staff underneath the one-stop operator that manages the job center operations. So there's no real cut in terms of staff. In fact, we've required that we have certain staffing requirements that were articulated in our RFP that are still expected of all these providers that we're currently working with. But we just moved money essentially from the adult and dislocated worker program budget to the one-stop operator budget, so that the one-stop operator is more than just an individual or a functional leader for the center, but is actually somebody with a team that's managing the center operations. And we think that'll help to have the focus of the one-stop operator really be centrally prioritized and concentrated on the job center services that we're offering to job seekers and customers, versus sharing program staff with another program, essentially. So those staff that used to be managing frontline staff that would be in the job center providing services, historically were under the adult and dislocated worker program. So we've moved them into the one-stop operator program this time around. So that's why that amount is significant. The one-stop operator is $400,000 budgeted right now. And this is just a starting budget. These are drafts. So we may tweak these numbers and excuse me, I'm sorry. And we'll also have conversations with our subcontractors as we're negotiating contracts with them, seeing whether or not this is sufficient to meet the need. We may offer a little bit less or more depending on what the need is, so that we can allocate money effectively. But this is just the starting point discussion. You see there's a significant amount of money in the youth program overall. And as we move forward, the youth continue to be, as we know in this community too, you've all heard a lot more stories, I think, in this past year about young people and trying to provide the best supports that we can in the community to them. So we'll be really concentrated on expending those resources well as we support youth that are currently enrolled in our local high schools, as well as youth that may no longer be enrolled in school or may have stopped out early, but that are needing to be connected to training or to the labor market or the workforce. So I just wanted to say that, there are increases. These are higher amounts than I think what we've typically been able to, but we have more money to allocate essentially to the youth. And the youth amounts include not just the staffing side of the equation, but also the work experience dollars. We tend to give that money to the subcontractor. So if they're enrolled in a work experience, the subcontractor manages that program, and then we reimburse them for invoices generated based on that work experience. So they have a higher allocation for that reason as well. And the adult and dislocated worker program is mostly staffing, and the one-stop operator is mostly staffing budgets, with some line items for supplies and other necessary items. And if we scroll down, our program budgets are in these categories here. What ITA stands for is individual training account, and typically it's our tuition essentially that we pay for training for individuals who go into our training programs. And so, you see the breakdown if you just look at the total amounts there of a little bit over $1 million between the adult and dislocated work, combined adult dislocated worker. The county typically enrolls over 200 people into these types of programs. At least in the last few years, that's been the case, and that's more than the previous few years before that. So we continue to see the demand for the training funds, and we build a healthy budget to account for that. Some training programs are smaller in amount. We can fund up to $10,000, but some only charge $5,000 around that for tuition. Others charge up to $10,000. So there's a wide spread in terms of the tuition amounts that are broken down within these budgets, but when we allocate it, but essentially we're building a healthy budget to cover the consistent need that we see. Can everyone still hear me? Just want to make sure.
I can, Greg.
Okay, all right, good. I saw some folks disappear from my screen.
I can hear you.
Okay, last
Yep,
time
I
when
can hear
folks
you.
disappeared, I couldn't, that's when I had my technology issue, so just wanted to make sure. We also have money invested in the on-the-job training program that's managed primarily with our business services group. That's the 6-month training where we subsidize wages for participants that are hired onto an employer and they're gaining real practical skills on the job. We have money for work experience. That's structured learning, individualized work experience where they get some occupational skills training or academic training combined with the kind of soft skills that they might build while they're working as an employee. And historically, our work experiences are mostly for youth that we're trying to support in our out-of-school and in-school youth program. But we've also been experimenting with work experience for adults as well. That's why it's its own line item here, because these programs are geared towards serving the adult population. And so these programs are really best for individuals who may have a limited work history, where work experience can add real value to their marketability. And so we'll look for partners that are interested in continuing to leverage that resource. We've been working with Accenture Federal Services, as you might know, on the IT work experience, and that's had varying levels of success. We've seen some really gain some great experience or great skills there, and then get employed by Accenture or other companies. And so we think there's still some benefit, but we can always move this money around as we see the need to. So we have a pretty sizable budget there, but that money can be reallocated to OJT or ITAs or incumbent worker training as we see the need. And we haven't seen as many folks enrolled in those work experiences in the past couple of years, but we still anticipate that there's some eager partners that are looking to leverage that more. And incumbent worker training, we already talked about with Washington University. We've also partnered with Straight Up Solar, which is a solar installation company. And so that program we've been building, we've been growing, and we feel like is a good opportunity for us to partner directly with employers to meet their specific needs in developing talent at their work sites. And then our apprenticeship funds are typically for right now. They're mostly used for those who enroll in the medical assistant apprenticeship program at Washington University or CNA certified nursing assistant apprenticeship program, but we want to grow apprenticeship, I think, as a board in multiple industries. So considering the need for a budget for that is always important as well. And the rest of this budget is really just internal staffing allocations for programming. It's more administrative costs, but I wanted to walk through the contract amounts up at the top and the line items for the individual program budgets, just to kind of have you all see what the big picture looks like for using the PY23 funds and any carryover that we have from PY22. Any questions about that right now, about this budget? This is, again, an early draft form, so feel free to offer suggestions or any thoughts you have as you react to some of the amounts that are in here that you just saw.
No questions on my end.
I'm good to go.
Okay, Jason, any thoughts or questions? If you're speaking, Jason, we couldn't hear you. I don't know if you said anything. I just want to make sure. I can't hear you still for some reason. It looks like you've unmuted, but we can't hear you. Or at least I can't hear you.
Greg, I no longer see Jason's microphone.
Mr. Chairman, I can see you speaking, but no one on here can hear you.
I see his microphone and it's muted. And it's gone again.
Well, so Jason, if you want to call in, there is a call-in number. I don't know if you want to keep your screen moving, but I'm not sure what's going on with your microphone. But you can look at the invite and there should be a call-in number if you want to do like Vanessa's done right now and call in.
Jason, raise your hand if you can hear us. Maybe you can just put something in the chat.
Yeah, he raises, yeah, he gave a thumbs up.
Yeah, he
Okay.
can hear us. He can hear us.
Okay.
Mhm.
Jason, if you have any questions about the budget, he has no additional comments. I see
Okay,
it.
sounds good. All right, well, we can move forward then on this. Let me stop sharing this. And then one other thing I'll share is just our expenditure report. It's pretty brief. Let's see, let me pull it up. So this is just our WEOA formula fund expenditure reports prepared by our fiscal unit. The PY23 allocations on the bottom, don't be alarmed by the fact that there's 0% expended there. Those are funds that we haven't started using yet. We haven't been authorized to use because we still have the pending ordinance, and they're the current funds that we're receiving. The funds at the top is what we'll talk through briefly here, and that is our current spending of the PY22 funds. Those need to be spent by 2024. And a lot of the money that you're not seeing as expended yet has been either obligated or budgeted for contractors or for these program budgets that I just mentioned. But this is just showing the real expenditures as of a day or two ago for those programs. So the youth is the most underspent at the moment. And remember, I mentioned that there's, with our youth program, we've only been operating with one youth provider for the last, it's almost 6 months now, I think, since we terminated contracts. That would typically be a lot higher. This is not necessarily a concern. This money will be allocated and obligated through contracts. And with the new providers that we have taking on these programs, but it accounts for some of we've fully spent the the PY21 funds expired in June of 2023, and I've received notification that we've expended all of those funds, but we still have to make a dent in these PY22 youth funds as we move forward. So we're going to charge our subcontractors with spending that money as quickly as they can, because we have a deadline of June 30th, 2024 to have that fully expended. But the others, adult program, I think we're on track to meet that objective of fully spending that by 2024. It looks like Jason has joined us by phone. Thanks, Jason. And the dislocated worker, we're not seeing as many dislocated workers now who are looking, or those that we enroll in the dislocated worker program who qualify that are seeking our services compared to adult. That's common with our service delivery, but our economy overall, even though folks are still challenged in our economy, it is a lower unemployment rate right now, so we're not seeing as many dislocated workers, again, who are coming into our center using our services, but that's always a population that we want to focus on. We did receive less money for the dislocated worker and the PY23 funds, as you see here, because you can look at the budget amounts for PY23, which is $875,000 compared to $972, and that's just based on formulas related to areas of concentrated unemployment. So it's supposed to reflect the need in the community. If we see that we're spending more funds that we need to in either adult dislocated worker, we can always move money, transfer money as well. And so we've talked about doing that possibly with funds from our dislocated worker to our adult program so that we can continue to meet the need that we see for those who typically are eligible and qualify for that adult program, because we do see lower need right now for dislocated worker funds. But this is just a status of kind of where we are. And again, this money, when you looked at that last budget I showed you, it accounts for the carryover PY22 money and combined with the PY23 allocations. Any questions?
No questions for me.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, well, hearing none, and I don't hear you ask any questions, Mr. Chair, so we can move over to new business, and we just have 2 items that we briefly will review here, and then we'll send you on your day. The first is the authority of the executive committee. So what is that item about? What we have been wrestling with, as you all have experienced, because you've attended multiple special board meetings, and this has happened now 2 years in a row. Jason likes to joke with me that since he's taken on the role of chair, we seem to have regular special board meetings now. So I think we want to get we want to get out of the habit of that, because we value your time, and quarterly meetings are really, to the extent that we can make those the time that we convene and not have to have too many special board meetings, we want to pursue that. So we have, our bylaws grant us the authority to enable the board to give the executive committee authority to make decisions on their behalf. We are proposing, or we will propose to the board, but we want your take on it first, that the executive committee be given the authority to vote on procedural, common, regular matters that are mostly financial in nature that occur every year. And so an example of this would be when we receive our funding allocations. There's no reason why the board would typically not vote to receive our funding allocations. If they did vote against that, then we would not be funded. And I guess there could be a reason for that, but I think that this is an area where we're always going to be receiving this notification on an annual basis. And it's something that, we typically receive in June. And because we asked the board to vote on it, we have to then wait to get the board together, and then we have to delay our process for being able to use those funds, because we can't get the council legislation process moving until we have the board vote on it. So it would be ideal if we had this committee be able to convene in some special circumstances to have a quick meeting to approve those items that are, again, common and that we don't have to work to get an entire board quorum for. So we're proposing that the annual agreement, which is the contract between us and the state of Missouri, which is required in order for us to implement any WIOA program, as well as receiving and approving standard and regular funding awards like the WIOA funding and the DSS programs that I just mentioned, that are just regular part of business, that we have the executive committee be at least empowered with the authority, if we want, to have them meet and vote on the board's behalf. And then the bylaws require us to notify the board at the next meeting that decision occurred. Is there any objection or any thoughts on this? I think it will help us streamline some things and help us move forward. Yeah, Vanessa, no?
No objection. I wholeheartedly agree.
And yes.
Okay. Well, that was easy then, but those are the only two items. I mean, we consulted our friend Mac on this when we were looking at the last special board meeting. I said, why can't we just have the executive committee meet and review this? Because according to the bylaws, they're empowered to do that. Mac reminded me, well, they have to be given specific authority to do that. So that's why we're having this discussion now, because we're identifying for you and for the board that the executive committee is empowered only to act on these in this area, to only approve the annual agreement and to approve regular funding sources that we receive. Now, if we had a discretionary grant, a new grant opportunity, we'd bring that to the board because that's not a regular part of business. But we're always going to receive our WIOA allocations. We're always going to receive our DSS funding. And those are the matters that we'd like to not have to struggle to find a quorum for and have a full board meeting about. And unfortunately, that still means that at least the three of you who are on this current committee still have to probably do some special meetings, but it'll be quick and it'll be something that allows us to probably more easily get the committee together because of scheduling. And it will allow us to be more nimble and faster in our ability to move things forward.
I just can't imagine saying no to funding unless there's some ethical reason, but why would someone ever say no to funding?
Right. And I would say that it could be the executive committee meets and says there's a reason why we want to bring this to the full board too, if there's ever a concern about that, hypothetically. But the main thing is just to give us the option to convene the board, because the board meets in May and then they meet again in August. And so we receive our notification of allocations typically in June. So then we have to have a full board meeting just to have the special discussion. But this committee can always decide that they prefer not to weigh in on that decision and pass it to the full board if there's a reason.
No, I don't think there's a reason. I'm
Okay.
totally comfortable saying
Yeah.
yes to funds.
Okay, so we'll bring that to the board and ask them to take a vote to authorize the executive committee to act on their behalf under very limited circumstances. And then they'll be notified at the next meeting per our bylaws of that vote. Okay. Finally, the last item is to just notify the committee that we're welcoming several new members. We're hopeful to have them in place at the next board meeting and joining our board. I'm going to show you who they are. Let me just pull up the screen here. Are you seeing a screen that says new board members? Okay. Let me see if I can. There we go. That's hopefully full screen now. You can see full screen? Or are you seeing the weird display?
I see the full PowerPoint.
Full screen.
Full
Okay.
screen.
Full screen.
Okay, great. So Brian Karp, Jim Barrett, Rob Morrison, Phyllis Ellison, and Linda Huntsman are all new members that we'll be welcoming to the board. They've been nominated by the county executive. They've been received by the Office of Workforce Development and approved as part of our board recertification. And they are now just, they received their notification officially to get their appointment and to take the oath of office that they need to take for the county. And so as long as they do that between now and the next board meeting, they'll be at the next board meeting. But we're excited to have some new business representatives to the board. Brian Karp with Gateway Studios and Production Services. It's entertainment. It's in the entertainment industry, production industry, and then Rob Morrison with Pfizer locally. Helps us with that kind of bioscience cluster. We don't really have much in the way of representation in that cluster on our board. So we're excited about that. And then we have a new labor representative, Jim Barrett, who works with the Teamsters, Local 688. joining us as well. Phyllis Ellison is replacing previously Hart Nelson, who served on our board for a short amount of time before he was moved into a different role at the college, the community college. But we know that the community college is always an important workforce development partner, and Phyllis brings a lot of expertise, I think, from kind of the training side of the equation and education side of the equation to the board. And then Linda Huntsman is now the CEO of Castle, so she's replacing Cinia Bosman, who was, the long tenured member of our board. And Linda also coincidentally worked in the Department of Human Services before she moved into this role. So she was reporting to Director Hayes as a division director in the Office of Family and Community Services. And so she really has an appreciation for the needs of our community as it relates to housing, the needs of our county older residents, and also families. And her work now with Castle, they're a critical core partner for WIOA services that we offer. They a lot of times are serving residents that they refer to our services sometimes and may need assistance with utilities or other resources that we can also make referrals to their programs to support them more holistically. But she brings a lot of energy. I've gotten to know her over the years, and she's a great talent to have on this board too. So these are the new members, and again, there's opportunities for more new members. I think we still have several vacancies. Maybe I'll bring the numbers with me to the next meeting of vacancies that we still need to fill. But Vanessa, I'm thinking about your point about how do we intentionally look at the composition of the board and make sure too that we're thinking intergenerationally as we move forward. But this is a good roster, I think, of folks to join us at this time. And like I said, two of these individuals were referrals from Mr. Archer as well. And so that's, again, a good example of how the board members can support is by identifying good potential partners in the community. So this is really just to notify you that they'll be joining us. Any questions about them?
No questions for me.
Okay, well, hopefully you'll have a chance to meet them at the next meeting. I'm going to follow up with our friend who manages the boards and commissions process and see where we are. But we're excited that we'll see at least probably a couple of them, if not all of them, at the next meeting. And you'll get a chance to meet them.
Greg,
Yes,
is the chairman familiar with Larry Davis?
good question.
Mr. Chairman, Larry Davis is the manager of community engagement for Dr. Page. He's on his executive team. He will be the Dr. Page's liaison to the board, just taking notes and reporting on our goings on.
Jason, we can't hear you again.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
Now can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
When I click on mute, it turns off the computer.
Okay. So that was
guess
yeah,
I'm
that was just a heads up for you that he'll be joining us at the next. Well, we expect that he'll be joining us for the next meeting.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, he's a good man. I know him. I know him. He'll be a good representative for Dr. Page.
Greg, when the new members join our board, could you let them know that maybe they take a couple minutes to introduce themselves when we have our board meeting and kind of tell about?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, I have nothing else to discuss today. Is there are any other items for discussion, or is there? Well, I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Board Chair.
Does anyone else have any items, questions, comments?
As they say, technology is.
You cut out a little bit, but I think you're excited about maybe ending the meeting a little bit early.
I think I'll watch Mark. A motion to adjourn is in order.
So move.
And second.
And second. We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.